"We wish Amanda's kids were our only grandkids," my mother said, right in front of my 9-year-old daughter. She ran away crying. I didn't cry. I took action. 3 days later, their lives started falling apart. Birthdays are supposed to bring out the best in people. In my family, they bring out the truth. It was my mother's birthday, and the whole circus had gathered at their house. My sister Amanda and her husband Eric, glowing as usual with their 3 little prodigies, Caleb the poet, Grace the pianist, and Moa, who could probably sing before she could talk. And then me, Monica, the disappointment who turned up with just one child, Rose. Rose was sitting on the edge of the couch, swinging her legs, clutching the card she'd made. A lopsided heart drawn in red crayon. She'd worked on it for hours. I'd told her it was perfect. I believed it. After the cake and the awkward small talk, someone, probably my mother, suggested the kids do something special for Grandma. This is what happens when half your family treats children like performing seals. Amanda's kids went first, of course. Caleb recited a poem he'd written, which sounded suspiciously like something lifted from a school anthology. Grace played a piece on the piano, fingers neat, rehearsed, confident. Moa sang a sweet little song. Everyone clapped as though they were watching child prodigies audition for Juilliard. Then it was Rose's turn. She's shy, always has been. But she wanted to try. She stood up, hands shaking, and started to sing Happy Birthday. Just that. Something simple. Her voice wobbled. She missed a note. By the second line, she stumbled, her cheeks flushing. Halfway through, her throat closed up and she went silent. There was a pause. A polite smattering of claps. Amanda's kids exchanged looks like they'd just won a competition. Rose sat down, her card still clutched in her hand, her eyes shining with unshed tears. And then Caleb, ever the show-off, piped up, "Can I do another one, Grandma?" He launched into another poem, this time flawless. The room filled again with warm applause. That's when my mother said it. She chuckled, still smiling at Amanda's children, and said, "Sometimes I wish you were our only grandkids." It was said lightly, as if it were funny. My father nodded along, lips pressed together in a smug little line. Amanda smiled. Awkwardly, yes, but she didn't object. No one did. The laughter faded only when Rose froze. She looked at my mother, then at me, and then the tears spilled over. She bolted. Her chair scraped back and she fled down the hall, sobbing, small shoulders shaking. The silence in the room was heavy enough to choke on. I stood. My heart was pounding so hard I thought I'd be sick. "Monica," my mother said, her voice airy, dismissive. "Oh, for heaven's sake, it was just a joke." A joke. I didn't answer. I didn't trust myself to. I walked down the hall, found Rose curled up on the floor, clutching her crayon card against her chest. Her cheeks were wet, blotchy, her little body trembling. I crouched down, pulled her against me. "Come on," I whispered. My throat was tight. "We're leaving." And that was it. No dramatic confrontation. No scene. Just me, my daughter, and the door. We walked past the dining room. Amanda's kids sat stiffly, my father stared at the table, and my mother's smile had curdled into something brittle. The cake sat untouched. No one stopped us. Outside, the air was cool. Rose's small hand gripped mine like she was holding on for life. In the car, she curled against me, her breath hitching, her tears soaking into my sleeve. What do you say in a moment like that? They didn't mean it? They did. It's not true? To her, it felt true. To me, it was just confirmation of everything I'd known my whole life. So I said the only thing I could. You are everything to me. You hear me? Everything. She nodded against my shoulder, but she didn't look convinced. I started the car. My mother's voice still echoed in my head. Light, careless, cruel. Sometimes I wish you were our only grandkids. They thought it was a joke. They thought it would blow over. They had no idea. Because to my daughter, it wasn't a joke. It was a wound. And to me, it was the final straw. They had no idea yet. But soon, their lives would start to fall apart. People like to say all children are blessings. My parents never got that memo. I was born when they were barely 18, still kids themselves. I wasn't planned, I wasn't wanted, and though they never came right out and said it, I felt it in every glance, every sigh, every joke. "You owe us, Monica," my dad would laugh. "We could have been in college if it weren't for you." "You cost us everything," my mom would add with a smirk, always framed as humor, always followed by a chuckle. But I knew. Even at 6 years old, I knew those weren't jokes. And then, a few years later, Amanda came along. The golden child. She was the one they chose, the one they wanted when they were older, married, settled. She got the balloons and the photo albums and the applause. I got the hand-me-downs from cousins and the guilt trips. That was the story of my childhood. Amanda sparkled, I survived. So I made myself a promise. If I couldn't be wanted, I'd be undeniable. In our family, nobody studied. We were working class through and through, but I buried myself in books like my life depended on it. Because it did. Every test, every grade, every scholarship application was a ladder rung out of the pit. And when I landed a full ride to law school, I thought maybe, just maybe, I'd finally done something worthy of pride. They didn't have to pay a dime. They were relieved. "One less burden," I overheard my mother say. Imagine your child winning a scholarship and your first reaction being relief you're not on the hook. Still, I thought, maybe once I'm a lawyer, once I'm successful, they'll see me differently. Because our parents ran a delivery company. Just a couple of vans, but enough headaches to last a lifetime. Licenses, permits, inspections. Things they never got right. I grew up listening to them grumble. If only we had a lawyer in the family, we'd be safe. So I decided, fine. I'll be that lawyer. I'll be the one who saves us all. For a while, it worked. I graduated, landed a good job at a firm, started making real money. For the first time, I wasn't scraping by. I even started sending them money, $300 a month to help with the mortgage. The first time in their lives, they had a child paying them. And when it came to their delivery business, I cleaned house. I filed their paperwork, argued with inspectors, drafted responses to competitor complaints. All pro bono, of course. Before me, lawsuits were constant. After me, the chaos disappeared. Their little company even grew. And for the first time, I thought, maybe I'd finally done it. Maybe I'd earned respect. Then came the promotion. The big one. I was in my early 30s, single, on track for a position that would have doubled my salary. My parents were ecstatic, practically giddy, planning how much more I'd be able to help. And then, life happened. I got pregnant. Not planned, not expected. A casual relationship that was never meant to last. He sees Rose sometimes, but he's not really in the picture. My parents told me to get rid of her. Don't ruin your life. That was their advice. But the second I saw that test, something in me shifted. For the first time, I didn't feel like a mistake. I felt like I had a purpose. So I kept her. And Rose has been the best decision I ever made. My parents? They were furious. You've ruined everything. Again. I gave up the promotion. I took a lower-paying role with flexible hours. I traded prestige for balance. And I was happy. I still am. But my parents never forgave me for choosing love over money. Now Rose is 9. Sweet, shy, always sketching in her notebook, more confident with a pencil than a microphone. She is my world. And despite everything, Despite their resentment, their constant digs, I still help my parents. $300 a month for their mortgage. Free legal work to keep their business from crumbling. Because I thought, maybe it's just what a good daughter does. Maybe one day they'll see. And then, just a few weeks ago, everything changed. I got another offer. A prestigious law firm, high salary, flexible hours. The kind of position I'd once turned down when I was pregnant with Rose. It felt like fate, a second chance. And this time, I could take it. Rose was older now. I could balance it. I planned to surprise my parents with the news on my mother's birthday. To tell them, you don't have to worry anymore. I'll carry it. You can retire. But before I could open my mouth, my mother looked at my daughter and said she wished Amanda's kids were her only grandchildren. And in that moment, all the years of sacrifice, all the jokes, all the debts I'd paid that were never mine, it hit me like a fist. I wasn't their safety net. I was their scapegoat. And Rose? She was just collateral damage. So when I walked out of that house with my daughter's hand in mine, I knew something they didn't. They thought it was just another joke. They thought I'd get over it like I always did. But I was done. And soon, their lives would start to unravel. On the drive home, Rose stared out the window, silent, her face pressed against the glass. I wanted to fill the silence, to say something that would undo what she'd just heard. But there are no words that can unhear cruelty. Later, tucked into bed with her sketchbook balanced on her knees, she finally asked, "Why would Grandma say that?" Did she mean it? And there it was, the question no child should ever have to ask. I sat down beside her. What she said was wrong. It was cruel. And no, it doesn't matter if she thought it was a joke, because it wasn't funny. Her chin trembled. But she looked like she meant it. She was wrong, I said firmly. What matters is you. You are amazing, and I will never let anyone make you feel like you're less than that. It wasn't a speech. It wasn't flowery, but it was the truth, and she needed to hear it. That night, once Rose was asleep, I opened my laptop and pulled up my banking app. My thumb hovered over the button, just for a moment, before I pressed it. Cancel recurring transfer, $300 per month. Confirm. It was almost laughably easy. One click to erase years of obligation, years of trying to buy affection that was never for sale. Then I drafted one last message. Don't ask me for legal help anymore. Hire your own lawyer. I stared at the screen, hit send, and closed the laptop. The next morning, my phone buzzed. Mom, we'll talk when you've calmed down. Dad, don't do anything rash. You'll regret it. I muted the thread. By that evening, the texts had shifted. Mom, the license renewal's due. Can you just file it? Takes you 5 minutes. Amanda, hey, can you do Dad a quick favor? It's important. I put the phone face down. The silence stretched on for days, punctuated by pings I ignored. Then the desperation set in. Dad, if we miss this deadline, we'll get fined. Please, Monica. Mom, answer your phone. Stop being childish. Just do the paperwork. Childish. The irony almost made me laugh. I let them stew, let the calls pile up. Voicemails stacking one on top of another, each one a little tighter, a little more frantic. Finally, after 4 days of silence, I answered. Not with a call, with one text. Hire a lawyer. I'm done. An hour later, my phone rang again. I let it go to voicemail, then again, then again. On the 10th call, I picked up. What is wrong with you? My mother snapped. You can't just cut us off. I already did, I said. My father's voice barged in, heavy and indignant. We raised you. We gave you everything. I almost laughed. Dry, bitter. And I've been paying it back ever since. But my debt is over. You're ungrateful, Mom hissed. No, I said. I'm free. And I hung up. That night, Rose sat at the kitchen table, sketching with a seriousness I usually only saw when she was trying to get her math homework perfect. She pushed the paper toward me shyly. It was a drawing of a girl holding a paintbrush, standing taller than a mountain. That's you? I asked. She nodded. I wish I could go to that art school. The one Grace's friend goes to, but it costs too much, right? I looked at her drawing again, the girl who was taller than mountains. Not anymore, I said. She blinked at me. What do you mean? I smiled, the first real smile I'd felt in weeks. I figured out a way. You're going to that school. Her face lit up. For the first time since my mother's words, Rose smiled wide, unguarded, pure joy spilling across her face. It was the look of a child who believed again. If you'd asked my parents why I stopped helping them, they'd have given you a very simple answer. I got snobby. That's the word they used. I heard it secondhand through my aunt, who called one morning with her voice dripping with false concern. Sweetheart, your mother says you've changed since that big job offer. That you think you're too good for us now. Too good. I almost laughed. This from the same people who once told me keeping Rose was the worst mistake of my life. They left out the part, I said flatly, where they told Rose they wished Amanda's kids were their only grandchildren. There was a pause. A long one. Then my aunt whispered, They said that? Yes. And just like that, the gossip chain shifted. Because while my parents were busy spinning the story of how their ungrateful daughter had abandoned them for money and prestige, I was quietly planting the truth. And the truth, as it turned out, had sharper teeth than any rumor. The calls started. Cousins I hadn't heard from in years. One of Amanda's in-laws. Even my father's brother, who barely remembered my birthday most years. Why'd you cut them off? They all asked, voices hushed, like we were discussing a crime. So I told them. Not angrily, not dramatically. Just the plain truth. At my mother's birthday, they told Rose they wished Amanda's kids were their only grandkids. Silence. Then outrage. Poor Rose! One cousin gasped. She's only 9! Unbelievable, muttered another. And just like that, my parents' carefully built story of the snobby lawyer daughter began to crumble. Some relatives still whispered that I should forgive and forget. But most, they started looking at my parents differently, and my parents knew it. Then came the call that changed everything. It was a friend from work, someone I'd confided in weeks before the birthday party. I'd told her about my new job offer, about how I'd planned to surprise my parents with it, to finally tell them they could retire. She sounded hesitant when I picked up. Monica, I think I might have messed up. My stomach tightened. What happened? I ran into your mom and dad at the store, she said quickly. I thought they already knew, so I asked how they felt about the surprise. They looked at me like I'd grown another head. I said, you know, the promotion. How you were going to tell them they could finally relax about money. Monica. They went pale. Like ghosts. I closed my eyes, the image clear in my mind. My mother clutching her shopping cart, my father's mouth going slack, both of them realizing in one instant what they had thrown away. They didn't know, I said. No, my friend said softly. And the way they looked, I think they realized what they lost. And that's when the desperation kicked into overdrive. The texts that once demanded turned syrupy. We miss you. Let's talk. It was just a joke. We didn't mean it. Family makes mistakes. We can fix this. And then, one Saturday afternoon, the doorbell rang. I opened it to find my parents standing there, holding the most ridiculous cake I'd ever seen. It was massive, covered in pastel frosting, with "To our favorite granddaughter Rose" piped across the top in shaky pink icing. If insincerity were an Olympic sport, they'd have been taking home gold. My mother's smile was stretched so tight it looked painful. "We made this for Rose," she announced brightly, "to show her how much we love her." I almost laughed. Not because it was funny, but because it was so off-key it hurt. Normal grandparents insist they love all their grandchildren equally. But mine? They decided to crown a favorite overnight, as if that erased the fact they'd wished she didn't exist. I leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed. "Rose isn't home." Their faces flickered, but my father rallied. "Then let her see it later." "We just want to make things right." Right. After telling my daughter she wasn't wanted, they thought a cake with bad icing and fake smiles could erase it. "You didn't come here for Rose," I said evenly. "You came here for my money." "That cake won't buy your way back." My mother's smile faltered. My father tightened his grip on the cake box like it was a lifeline. "Please," my mother whispered, the desperation finally cracking through. "Just let us in." "No," I said. "Take your cake and leave." And that's what they did. Two humiliated figures walking down my driveway, clutching their sugary bribe. The business collapse came next, slow at first, then all at once. First, they missed a license renewal, a small fine, annoying but survivable. Then came the compliance audit, missing forms, incorrect filings, the kind of paperwork I used to handle in my sleep. The fines doubled. A month later, a competitor filed a complaint. My parents tried to handle the hearing themselves. I heard later from a relative who'd sat in. They stumbled over legal jargon, contradicted themselves, practically handed the case to the other side. The penalties wiped out their savings. By the end of the year, the delivery company was finished. Amanda, who had been counting on inheriting the business, was left with nothing but debt. And without my $300 a month, without their safety net, my parents fell behind on the mortgage. Within months, the house was gone. Meanwhile, my life bloomed in contrast. Rose thrived at her new fine arts school. One afternoon, she came running out with a drawing clutched in her hands, breathless. "Mom! They put mine on the board! The teacher said it's one of the best in the class." For once, my child's work wasn't brushed aside. For once, she was celebrated. At work, I was thriving too. The new firm gave me cases that challenged me, colleagues who respected me. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was finally where I belonged. And then there was Daniel, a widowed father I met at Rose's school. His daughter loved drawing too, and soon playdates turned into conversations, conversations into dinners. For the first time in years, I felt something I thought I'd lost. Possibility. I sometimes thought about the cake, about the look on my parents' faces when they realized I wasn't letting them in. I thought about my friend's voice on the phone, describing how pale they'd gone when they realized what they'd thrown away, and the truth is, it hurt. Because I really had been ready to give them everything. I'd been ready to take care of them for the rest of their lives. But instead, they chose a joke that wasn't a joke. They gambled, and they lost. While their lives unraveled, mine was finally falling into place. They had bet everything on me always being their safety net. And when they lost me, they lost everything. Fast forward a year. Rose is unrecognizable from the shy girl who once stumbled through a birthday song. At her fine arts school, her drawings hang in the hall, and she talks about colors and brushstrokes with the kind of confidence I used to dream she'd have. Watching her walk into that building every morning, head high, is worth more than every cent I ever wasted on my parents. My own life looks different too. The new firm became home. The promotion wasn't just a title. It gave me stability, respect, and the freedom to choose my own future. And Daniel? He's no longer just the widowed dad I met at drop-off. He and his daughter Lily moved in with us a few months ago. When I was a kid, I always imagined I'd have 2 children of my own one day. Then life happened. By the time Rose was born, I was single and staring down 40. I told myself that dream was over, that she would be my only, and I was grateful for her. But still, in quiet moments, I grieved the family I thought I'd never have. Now, somehow, that old dream came true in a way I never expected. Rose and Lily, Daniel's daughter, are like sisters, rooms side by side, covering the walls with drawings, whispering to each other at night until they fall asleep. And Daniel and I get to raise them together, a team. As for my parents, word travels. They rent a small apartment now, a far cry from the house they once bragged about. The business is gone. Amanda's bitterness is legend, and the relatives who used to defend them keep their distance. Everyone knows the story, the grandparents who told a child she wasn't really wanted. That's the legacy they built. So what do you think? Did I go too far? Or not far enough? Let me know in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for more.